Hey! So, this is a bit of a change from our regular podcast format. Tonight, it's just me and Josh, and we're going to focus on the talking head opinion piece of another gaming content creator. Let's hear what they have to say about the state of fake gamers.
Hi, I'm Josh, and my New Year's resolution is to bring less NPC energy to the table.
I'm Andy, and my New Year's resolution is for you to comment, like, and subscribe everywhere that you can do that. Hey, everybody.
Yo, it is Tango time.
It's me and Josh bringing you Video Game Tango this week. We got no Nick. He's dead.
Yep.
So we have a little bit of a different one for you this week. We're not going to bring you the typical gaming news. Instead, we have a topic of discussion brought to us by another YouTube / Twitch creator, Alanah Pearce. A short little bit about Alanah Pearce and how I know of her is Alanah Pearce has been in the video games industry for a long time, usually doing writing work for various parts of the industry. I learned of her existence through a subsidiary channel of Rooster Teeth called Funhouse, hosted by Bruce Green and several other large on-screen personalities who had been on Inside Gaming previously. Inside Gaming started as like a little YouTube channel, just a few buddies, and then turned into got bought out by GameSpot at some point, I believe, or maybe IGN or one of the big publications. And then, had a big turn for the better, had a big turn for the worse, and then eventually they had to shutter. Then they decided to go independent via Funhouse, and eventually got bought up by Rooster Teeth. Well, Rooster Teeth got bought up by AT&T and Time Warner and all the full screen and all the things that they got bought up by. So Funhouse still exists to this day with a totally different cast of people. There's very few of the original. Only one of the original cast members, I think, actually exists on the show anymore, at least in a permanent spot at Funhouse. But Alanah Pearce used to write for Funhouse. She used to be one of their comedy writers, or at least a writer in mostly a comedy genre on YouTube. She was part of Inside Games on Funhouse because they brought that back in a big way. And they would talk about gaming news weekly on Funhouse and sometimes more frequently. But she's always been in the gaming industry, for it's been a long time now. Since she left Funhouse, she's done a couple things, but most notably, she became in the last few years a junior writer for Sony Santa Monica, who most recently is known most for the God of War franchise. The big reboot that happened on PS4, she was a junior writer around that time. And then since then, she's become a senior writer and has had a big hand in the creation of God of War Ragnarok. So she is a fairly prominent figure in the games industry. She's got a large Twitter following. She's got a big YouTube following, etc. And for better or for worse, some of her viewers watch her because I think she brings a lot to the table as far as her knowledge and opinions go. I don't know that I necessarily always agree with all of her opinions, but she's a smart cookie in the industry.
But what you're saying is she has both the experience and the technical acumen to have a relevant opinion in this.
She's got the book cred, she's got the street cred, and she's played a lot of video games. She plays way more video games than we do. She knows more video games than we do, and she's in the industry. She sees it happen.
A writer on one of my top 10 favorite games of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, God of War changed the game for me. Holy crap. Definitely it sounds like she has like I said, the technical acumen and the experience I'm interested to hear what her been. So what exactly is this? And is this kind of like just what amounts to an expose or an opinion on?
This is an opinion piece.
An opinion piece? An OP?
She's laying down her thoughts, okay?
Okay.
So it's a talking head piece. We are going to be watching the video, so we'll have that up on screen for anybody that's going to be watching in the YouTube format or the VOD later, or anybody that's watching live right now. There is a visual component to it, but it is not necessary. It's a talking head piece. So if you're listening to the audio version,
our audio listeners are not missing out on anything.
You're not missing out on anything at all. Yeah.
Perfect.
So, if you prefer the visual component of somebody that we're watching the content of, check it out on YouTube. But
Of
I
course,
just gotta let you know
we will have links for that in the show notes and all of that good stuff. So you know how good he is with citations. So
yeah, but as far as like the visual component goes, it really is not necessary. You can definitely enjoy this without it. It's only as important as our visual component is for the Twitch and YouTube audience. So like if you're not into that already, you won't need to watch this at all. I do want to put out a little bit of a disclaimer. This video that she made, it's an opinion piece. It's her own opinion. It's not swayed by any outside source. She does have a sponsor for this floating headpiece or this talking headpiece. She's sponsored by Geology. Geology is a skincare brand. She will talk briefly about that during the video. We are going to allow that to run. I just want to let you know it runs for about a minute. If the ad hits and you're not into it, go ahead and fast forward just a little bit. Not too far. It's about a minute long. But we are going to let her say her piece for her sponsorship because we are borrowing her content to talk about. And this content was, she did make the choice to sponsor this content. And I just want to let you know ahead of time that we are going to let that run because her promo code does still exist, and that's how she's monetizing.
It's a fairly recent video, so if with the code still being good, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
let's since we're borrowing the content, let's not be thieves in the night here.
Yep. So we don't want to be stealing your content. We want to be doing this under fair use, and I think that under fair use, you should also let their ad play. So as long as the code is still relevant, which it is, this video is only a couple days old. So we want her to get her ad revenue. If you're interested, stick around for a skincare ad. If not, feel free to skip it as you always could on even her channel. But we will let it run just because it's still active and running, and we are borrowing her content to give our opinion on. So I think without further ado...
One last thing before we get to it. Did we already talk about what the opinion piece is about? Can we narrow that focus down a little bit for our viewers here?
Sure. I don't want to go too far into it because I want the content to speak for itself, but... the title of this video is called "I'm Sick of Fake Gamers." What Alanah means by fake gamers is there are a lot of people that would consider themselves gamers, but in the spirit of the word, and in my eyes, and Alanah Pearce obviously agrees because that's the title of her video, I wouldn't consider real gamers. There is a large section of people that play video games, but they stick to strictly the AAA titles. They stick strictly oftentimes to a single genre or maybe two. We're talking about the yearly Call of Duty player. We're talking about the yearly release Madden player. We're talking about the FIFA player, right? Where they stick to mostly one genre. They might deviate a little bit, but as far as deviation goes, it's another AAA title. Like, somebody that's playing every Modern Warfare and sticks to that as their main may have taken some time out of their week to play some Spider-Man when it came out, right?
So it's analogous to someone saying they're like a cinephile, but they only like Transformers movies.
Sure. Or, somebody saying they're a big gearhead, but they actually don't know anything about cars.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they're not,
all right.
They're
Excellent.
not in the industry. It's not their passion to enjoy, a large slew of things. They're very focused in the way that they play video games. And we're not saying that in itself is inherently wrong, but some of the byproduct of that is a lot of hate towards modern video games.
Okay. Yeah.
And because, sometimes I fear that we can sound very negative towards video games on our podcast because we do talk about a lot of kind of bullshit. A lot of and we do expose parts of the games industry that we think is important to in a negative light sometimes.
Yeah.
So I do want to make it clear that we are very much video game enjoyers. We enjoy a slew of genres. We enjoy all the way from AAA to the smallest indie titles. And we try to put a focus on video games that we do enjoy. So while we talk a lot about these releases that came out poorly or received poor reception or whatever, Alanah's main address is that component is that these people that don't play video games for the most part talk a lot of shit about video games.
A word in our defense, though, real fast. I feel most of our complaint doesn't fall on like, man, this is a shit fucking game and a lot of shade. It's like, this is a really fucking awesome game, even in its current state. If there could have just been a little more time, like I feel like we come down a little harsher on the
industry side of things.
The industry side of things.
Yeah, rather than the developers.
You know.
We do, yeah.
Just a word in our defense, and yeah, so, you know,
At any rate, I think it's probably time that we start this video.
Let's get to the content, baby. Let's get to it.
Let's get to the meat of things. This might be a little bit of a shorter episode. I don't know yet. The video itself is only 17 minutes long with like a minute long ad piece in there. So let's get right down to it. And Josh and I will be taking regular pauses to address some of the talking points made by Alanah here.
This video is sponsored by my partner Geology. There's a new kind of fake gamer on the rise, and I, for one, am sick of it. You mean to tell me we're just letting these people walk the streets, pretending that they play video games, having opinions on video games, and they don't even like video games? Not on my watch. I'm not having it. Genuinely though, this is a thing, and I do think these people are kind of causing problems, and that I have also contributed to those problems, and it only occurred to me recently. And so I wanted to make this video, which I'm sure is going to upset some people, but here we are. There is a recent and growing culture of people who just like hate video games being very involved in video game communities. I see it in my comment sections all the time, and I'm always like a little confused by it. Anytime that I've mentioned in any video the amount of good games that came out in 2023, there's always this response of people being like, actually all games shit. Look at all the bad games that came out this year. The day before, I always have to look it up because I forget the name of the game.
Yeah, me too.
Skull Island, Rise of Kong, Gollum. All these terrible video games, all games are shit. They all have battle passes and microtransactions, and they're all garbage. Which to me just directly translates to, you don't play many video games. Like, if you think that all games have those problems, or that all games suck, you're kind of firsthand admitting that you don't like video games, right? That's what you're telling me. So that's my first thesis here. If you're the kind of person who says, oh, all video games are shit, you're not playing the right video games. There are a lot of really great video games that have come out this year. There are literally more than I would have time to play. You would have trouble while also having a life, even finishing the amount of games that were very, very, very good, that were not predatory and did not have predatory practices that came out in 2023. If you tell me all video games are shit these days, I suspect that you only play really specific kinds of AAA games, like really specific, like repetitive, potentially exploitative releases, and that I hope that you're able to broaden your horizon on the kind of games that you play, because that is an issue. If you only play games you don't like or only play bad games, not only are you not going to like video games, you're also going to be giving those things money and thus creating more. The reason that we keep getting battle passes is because people keep buying battle passes. When people talk about like vote with your wallet with video games, the problem is we are voting with our wallets. The games community is repeatedly telling publishers that it will spend money on microtransactions and battle passes and pre-orders. Dear God, stop pre-ordering video games. I don't know why people do this. And I wanted to make this video for two reasons. One, to tell you about some of the amazing games that came out this year, and two, to talk about like the separate parts of this problem, okay? Now, I'm not absolving the games industry of a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues. The problem that I have noticed is a culture of perpetuating the issues, which again, I've contributed to. I think this has only happened more recently. We used to just forget about bad games. But now, when we talk about a game like The Day Before, which again I had to look at the name of because I always forget what it's called because it's so fucking generic. This was a game that effectively got skyrocketed to popularity because everybody assumed it would be a scam, and then it came out and it was bad, and then the servers were getting shut down. I actually haven't played it and considered making a video about it, and that's sort of when I realized the problem.
So it's interesting that she brings up The Day Before and how this contributes to the problem. And the problem is something that she'll get into, but I'll get into it just a little bit here. I had like a long form expose in the works for The Day Before because we'd spoken about it months ago, you know, maybe even close to a year ago, about how when I saw the evidence and when I saw the work done on the game, I thought that it was going to be just vaporware and we weren't actually even going to see a final product. Now, I was wrong in one aspect, but it turns out that the product that they put out was no better than the issues that like the glaring issues you saw in the media that they showed.
Yeah.
Now, this game skyrocketed in popularity because it was bad, because it was unfinished. And while I had been making the expose on it, I realized, like, am I perpetuating a cycle of featuring bad games and giving them more light of day than the games that I've been enjoying? Like, we did a 15-minute segment on Death Must Die, which is a game that I've been enjoying immensely since just before the holiday season. And I was thinking about doing an entire episode on the failure that is the day before.
Yeah, but it wasn't so much about the failure that the game was. It was calling out, like, why does this keep happening? It was honestly, it's kind of in the vein of what she's talking about here. It was more focused on, like, the fact that it was just ripping people off. We weren't talking about this is a shitty game, blah, 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 blah. We were talking about how it was a virtually a scam right from the very beginning. And I mean, like, I don't know. It seems you should be able to talk about when people are being scammed. You should be able to call people out. Like,
sure.
we were calling something out. It's not that we were, just throwing shade on a game and then gonna go, like, fucking play it or something.
Yeah.
We were calling it out. That was the whole idea. An expose, you're exposing something.
No, for sure. But by the same token,
I see what you mean.
Also,
about
not talking about it is probably more effective at the end of the day. It may be more effective.
That's true. There is what is a thing. Says no such thing as bad press, right?
Right.
So maybe that is a fair point. If something's bad, then it should just be blackballed.
Yeah.
Like
let it disappear.
Yeah.
Just let it die.
Yeah.
And I think she makes a good point with that.
Said something akin to that kind of already. How bad games used to just be forgotten.
Exactly, and the day before is still making headlines. The servers are coming down. Nobody should be playing this game anymore. But at any rate, this video really stood out to me because I literally had scrapped like a full hour-long diatribe about the beginnings and end of the failure that was the day before.
I see why it jumped out at you.
Yeah, it really jumped out at me, and I think she makes a lot of good points, and I think she makes a lot of points that we make regularly on the podcast that she just says much more eloquently than we generally do. So let's go ahead and hear her point on the day before and get a little further here.
I know about this bad game. You know about this bad game. I would be telling you more about this bad game. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm not going to play bad games again. It's funny. But why continue to perpetuate the bad and signal boost the bad so much when there are literally more good games than most of us can even afford to buy? The same thing happened with Skull Island Rise of Kong, and the same thing happened with Golem, which again, I played on this very channel. For longer than I played games that I really liked this year, I didn't play a game like Dredge, which is like absolutely one of my favorite games of the year. I did speak about it, but I didn't play it here. And we basically created this culture of like really, really, really signal boosting bad video games to the extent that I think it might be happening intentionally in some cases. By spending so much time highlighting the things we don't like, which there are things in games that I think are the worst that they've ever been. There are things that I think are really, really, really bad. If you know me, you know I'm very anti-microtransaction. I've only bought one ever, and it was a dog in Sea of Thieves. Rare is one of my favorite studios. I'm happy to support them. I won't buy battle passes for any game ever. I feel negatively about plenty of parts of the live service push because it means that we are getting less video games overall and instead are getting more video games that want to consume and steal all of our time. Like that, I think, is a really negative part of the video game industry, that there are certain publishers that are trying to shift heavily towards specifically live services in the interest of monetizing the amount of hours that you play in a different way. And thus they kind of have to forcibly make games more addictive to keep you engaged in that one game to keep getting money from you for 1,000.
Overwatch.
Right.
The reason for Overwatch 2's launch, I mean, they didn't have to launch a new game,
No.
but they did so they could change the formula and so they could monetize it better.
Yep. That's
Right?
legit the only reason.
Yeah. And while we're talking Activision Blizzard, let's talk about WoW. World of Warcraft became a game that had, now it's an MMO, it has no end, right? Until they write one in.
Mhm.
But it's, for a long time, you could take extended breaks from World of Warcraft and you wouldn't miss a lot of content. The content cadence that they continued to push, though, was instead of delivering you new content, let's give you a patch where it's just new dailies, new stuff to grind. And it became ultimately a grind fest. And I think that's what drove a lot of players, myself included, away from the game. I stopped doing dailies, and that meant for my character that I wasn't going to be eligible for some content because some content was time locked behind daily content. Now, Blizzard has taken a stance in more recent times with like Season of Discovery, where they're not going to be time locking content arbitrarily. They're going to be releasing the content as it comes out. So they released the up to 25 because that's what we have ready, right? As when I say we, it's Activision
the royal
Blizzard,
we.
the royal we, because that's what we have available. And that's what we have tuned. And as soon as there's more content, we'll release more content. And they've said that instead of trying to continue to take your time, they want to be delivering more content. They want to be earning your time rather than keeping you on the platform.
Yeah.
So they've been vocally, especially since this last BlizzCon, really dedicated to that. And that's again what sparked my interest in maybe coming back to World of Warcraft in the way that we're talking about is like, I'll come back to WoW if there's always something for me to do. And when there isn't something for me to do, I can just play something else, right? I don't want to feel like I'm missing out on content because I'm not willing to do random daily quests for minuscule rewards, right?
Yeah.
I don't like, please don't time gate my content behind daily quests and reputations. Make that content available day one. Or, if you're going to time gate it, make it so you can get it done quickly. I'll use an example like the Sons of Hodir reputation in Wrath of the Lich King. You could grind that out always. You were never out of dailies to do. Well, I mean, if you ran out of dailies to do, there was a turn in reward quest where it was a random drop from any enemy in the local area to the Sons of Hodir that you were working on the reputation for, where any enemy was had a potential of dropping what's called a relic of Ulduar. You get 10 of those relics and you were able to turn them in for the same amount of reputation that a daily request board would give you. So you could grind that out as much as you wanted to, but they were also just available on players. They weren't bound to your character. So people could put those up on the auction house. So if you were relatively wealthy at the time, you could just buy your way into exalted reputation with the Sons of Hodir if you wanted to. And that was always an option for you. They got rid of that kind of system in later versions of reputation grinds, and some of their content was behind reputation grinds. So, wow, like instead of saying, you have to turn this many things in before you can do it, it was you have to do, like, you have a minimum amount of days that you have to complete all of the quest content for before you can unlock this, right?
Yeah.
So it was absolutely time gated. So because they're dedicated to no longer using those kinds of systems going forward, I'm feeling much better about jumping into WoW again.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
So what she's saying about,
Earning the time.
earning your time is more important than just keeping your eyes on their product.
Yeah.
Which I think is an important distinction.
Yeah.
So let's keep going.
Hours or whatever. Like that, I think is a whole minefield that maybe I should make a separate video about predatory practice in the games industry or things that I'm really concerned about. I've definitely been meaning to make a video about advertising and how bad I think that's going to get. So maybe I'll do that soon. This video is not about that. There are things that I think are negative, and I don't think we should ignore those negative things. They should be spoken about. The problem is the speaking doesn't help very much. Not only are we advertising the games that we don't like in a lot of cases, and again, not talking about the games that we do like, but like I said, gamers are already kind of voting with their wallets. We are already buying microtransactions, battle passes. That is why publishers keep doing it. You can scream about how much you don't like it, but that is what the industry is telling them is working. For as long as that keeps happening, that is not going to change no matter how angry you are on the internet about it, unfortunately. And I think this year especially, having Skull Island Rise of Kong and Gollum and the day before, and their Walking Dead game that looked absolutely terrible all come out in the same year, I think we are actually moving to a movement where we are incentivizing bad video games. It is time to talk about Geology. Geology is a skincare solution that takes all of the
So this is her ad
honestly
spot.
very
The
hard
ad spot
work out.
doesn't go for too long. I'd say you're safe to go to travel forward, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then it'll be mostly over with the ad spot. But it isn't too long. We're going to let it roll. So just stick in with us. Appreciate y'all.
Of skincare. I only started learning about skincare extremely recently. And when I started trying to find out any information, I was just overwhelmed by the amount of different products and different ingredients and what's good for what and why. Geology makes it super, super simple. You take a quiz, which is very quick, and they make a simple and effective routine that works for you. Their products are built around a handful of powerful, proven ingredients. So you aren't doing a million confusing steps and you don't know in what order. You'd even labels like 1, 2, 3. It tells you exactly the order to use things in, so you know. I will also say all of their products feel really silky and lightweight. They don't feel overly greasy or like they're like clogging your face in any way. And they smell really nice, not too strong, which I feel like is a huge plus. And obviously this works for a lot of people. Geology is a 26-time award-winning skin, hair, and body care company, recognized in publications like Men's Health, Hypebeast, Birdie, Esquire, Ask Men, and Oprah Daily Grooming Awards. They have over 7,000 5-star reviews and have a track record of transforming skeptics into loyalists. So right now, for a limited time, they are hooking you up with an absolutely insane offer. Use my code CHARALANAZARD70 or scan the QR code that is on screen and they will give you an exclusive 70% off their award-winning skincare trial set. On top of that, you can get 50% off the add-on products of your choice when you add it to your trial. This is one of the best offers you'll see, so make sure you get it before it's gone. That code is CHARALANAZARD70 and the company is Geology, Geologie. Now back to the video. I think we are.
So I just want to point out that it's funny that we're talking about content where we get an ad for skincare routine when we had like a super long discussion about our skincare and beard care routines on our last stream.
A little bit weird, I guess.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny that that happened. So,
It's the algorithm, I guess.
I mean, it's not, but but it's funny that happened that way. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, maybe months away from probably smaller studios who don't care as much about their reputations. I think there is one that has already done this, intentionally making rage bait bad video games because they know that content creators will play them for free. It's very hard to get a content creator to play a game that you worked very hard on and really like, unless it exists as a well-known IP in the AAA space. Turns out getting people to play really, really bad video games, even the smallest content creators will do it, is really, really easy, to the extent that it is now, I think, we've created a legitimate business strategy. The specific publisher that I wanted to call out is a company called Game Mill. Game Mill made Skull Island Rise of Kong, and a report from The Verge revealed that Game Mill gave Iguanabee, the developer, only 1 year to build the game from scratch beginning June 2022, which is insanity. You can't make a game in 1 year. Apparently 2 to 20 developers were working on the game at any given time, and the game were required to crunch in order to even finish the project, which still came out very bad, unfortunately. It received super negative reviews. People said the game was ugly, full of bugs, very boring, does nothing meaningful or new or clever at all, terrible visuals, horrendous gameplay, awful level design, just overwhelmingly excessively negative. And of course, the publisher knew about this. They rushed the game out within a year for some reason, and now all of us know what it is. This game has been so hotly spoken about, so much more than any of the good games that came out in 2023. Another game also from Game Mill Entertainment had a similar release this year. The Walking Dead Destinies came out November 17, and it's considered to be one of the worst games of 2023, with Ollie Reynolds from Nintendo Life saying there is absolutely nothing here that has been executed well. It's a game that is simply rife with technical blunders, terrible production values, and broken mechanics. 2 games from Game Mill that were probably created under the exact same circumstances that got so much attention for being bad. Watch whatever Game Mill's next game is. That's all I'm trying to say. I think we have potentially, unintentionally, created a culture of certain publishers being like, wait, if we make a bad game and it only takes a year to make and with limited staff and we make them crunch for free, a bunch of people will buy it so they can talk about it. This seemingly will only work if it's an IP, because it kind of requires us to recognize the property, but we have created a legitimate business strategy for low-level or mid-level publishers who previously have a record of publishing some more creative titles. You can kind of get more creative and take more risks in that space. There's less to lose. In conclusion, we give a lot of attention to things we don't like in video games. I think there are a lot of people who involve themselves in video game culture who don't even really play video games and instead just watch angry YouTubers, a lot of whom, as it turns out, also don't even really play video games. We do not spend anywhere near enough time talking about the games that we actually do like and rewarding the things that we actually do like. I think the gaming community did a great job with Baldur's Gate 3 this year. Buying that game, telling the industry that you want something of that scale, that is a huge win for everybody. But we still got a bunch of fake gamers walking among us. And I fully feel that way about anybody who says all games are shit now. All games are bad now. Are they? The only way you can think that is if you don't really play video games and you only pay attention to people on YouTube. There's a lot that's wrong. I'm not removing that. And a lot that's bad and a lot that I find very concerning as someone who really loves video games. But there were so many good games this year that my guess is you just haven't heard of them. You just don't know about them because you don't really pay that much attention to video games. It's okay to admit that, fake gamer. In conclusion, I'm going to leave you with a bunch of these. Here are what I think are some absolutely incredible games that came out.
So she's going to get into some really good games that she thinks, deserve your attention and are of varying, quality of title as far as, AAA to indie developers. We'll go through those here in just a minute. But the final thoughts that she landed on was that game it's literally called Game Mill, who is a publisher for Iguana B, who did the Skull Island Kong game, but also published the Bad Walking Dead game and had similar development issues where it was Skeleton Crew given a year to develop what's supposed to be a AAA game, right?
Yeah.
And because those games were monetarily successful because they were bad, it turns into an industry of making potentially bad games on purpose.
Yeah, no, I see what she's saying there. That is actually a really fair point. But to counter that, games like Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, and Dredge, like some of these games, like they did really fucking well and are good games.
Sure. And she's not discounting that, like, there aren't.
I mean, she did make the fair point of Baldur's Gate, and honestly, the community really did, like, the gaming community as a whole, like, kind of backed that. Except for the, like, it's kind of like, again, like we even talked about this before, about, like, how are there, like, people saying that Spider-Man 2 should be Game of the Year? It's like, that's just not going to happen.
For some people, that's one of the only games that they played that deviated from the regular, right?
And that is a very fair point. Like, they're saying they don't understand how something like Baldur's Gate 3 or Tears of the Kingdom or Alan Wake 2 is better than Spider-Man 2. It's like, well, all three of these games are objectively, better in some way, right? Like a huge writing team, super anticipated.
Sure. And they did well, right?
Yeah,
but she's not saying she's not saying that we don't get good games that get good recognition that get right, because a legitimately good game, especially one that's got big exposure like Baldur's Gate, who came from Larian Studios, who's made big games in the past. We have Sony Studios, who's done Spider-Man 2. Yeah. That's inevitably going to be a good game. Those games had a lot of press about them beforehand, and they had massive advertising budgets behind them.
Yeah,
where
that's very true.
She's going to bring up Dredge here in just a little bit, and she's already brought up Dredge, one of her favorite games of the year and maybe ever. Got very little because they come from an indie studio, so they don't get the exposure that the others do, right? Just by the nature of marketing and the nature of the size of the company.
And she also spoke about how streamers as a whole are contributing to this. But to make a counterpoint, a game like Vampire Survivor, without being a quality game and being absolutely fucking adored by the streamer community, something like that, it
could have fallen off. You're right. You're right.
It didn't have. There was no advertising.
But that's not the norm.
That's true. That is an exception. I will admit that is an exception to the rule.
Here's the thing. Spider-Man 2, whether it was going to be good or not, it was going to do well because it's a loved IP. It's from a name brand. It's Sony, I'm not looking for exclusive. Sony first platform.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to be good because they throw a massive advertising budget behind it too.
Yep.
So some games they're going to do well, whether they're good or not, and some good games are going to do well just because not by the virtue of them being good, but because they were always going to do well regardless.
Well, I mean, Sony's not going to get away with putting out something like that Walking Dead trash.
Right.
If Spider-Man 2 looked like that, and people lose their goddamn mind. Now, thinking back on something like Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition, that was poopy.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of videos of people making fun of like the glitches and how bad it was. And honestly, I played the game like to do some of that stuff. So, I mean, I guess there is... I don't know, some of that. I've already paid for Grand Theft Auto several times.
And I don't think that what we're trying to do here is feel guilty about buying games sometimes. But it does seem like, especially in the term, like we may
does
have,
seem to stick.
It does.
I'm really seeing,
and we have a new industry potentially burgeoning from bad games.
Yeah,
right?
I definitely actually see that. I kind of see the point
So-
she's making there.
So let's see what comes. Let's find out what comes from Game Mill next, right?
Yeah,
Is it going to be another shit show where it was between 2 and 20 developers working on it at any given time under duress, under extreme crunch, and delivered within a year? Right?
Yeah, like if that's
the case,
becomes starting to become an industry standard,
then
we've done something terrible.
Then we've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, let's let her continue with some of the good games that because I happen to agree a lot with this list. I didn't play everything that's on this list, but I know of, or amongst us, we have played most of these games. So we'll let this roll, and I want to make sure we feature the entirety of our video, and then we'll come back and review here in just a few minutes.
Out in 2023, a lot of which have not gotten as much attention as Gollum or Kong or The Walking Dead or The Day Before. And that sucks. If you think all video games suck, try any of these. I'm not going to go with the super obvious picks that everyone's picking, like Baldur's Gate 3 and Zelda and Alan Wake 2. So let's start with a franchise you probably heard of, but a series that I feel like never, ever, ever gets enough love. This is Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. This game is, in my opinion, absolutely incredible. It has a lot of strength in both combat and exploration, and I think they really nailed the pacing. It is so sharp and so fast-paced. Unless you don't want it to be, it's totally opt-in. And the story, especially if you've played the other games, is one of its best. I think it stands by itself quite effectively, and if you've never played any of the games, you will miss a little bit of context. I'd recommend just watching YouTube videos, but you will otherwise still have a really, really rewarding experience playing. It is basically Xenoblade Chronicles realizing what it was trying to be the whole time, getting rid of previous issues that some of the other games had, in my opinion, and coming up with something that is effectively the best of its genre. Next up is Against the Storm, which is obviously a very particular type of game, but again, if you're the kind of person who thinks all games suck, maybe try something that's outside of the usual genre. That's not the action-adventure that so much of the AAA space leans.
And this is the one that Nick has been following and playing, pretty
I
religiously,
recognize
right?
it right away.
Yeah, so some of these games, like, we have been definitely talking about and trying to push out in the space there. And I think Nick, honestly, out of all of us, has probably done the best job of highlighting games that he's really been into or playing recently. So yeah, Against the Storm being one of them. Yeah, let's go back to it.
It's kind of a mixture of strategy and roguelike elements. There is a ton of randomly generated content, which means that every single time you play, things are going to feel incredibly different. And of course, it has a really satisfying gameplay loop, taking essentials from other really well-known games in this particular genre. But it also just has an unbelievably, undeniably addictive gameplay loop. Again, I know this is a really particular kind of game, but if you're unhappy with everything that you're playing right now, check it out. It is one of the most positively reviewed games on Steam of the year. It has tons of charm and is incredibly unique, super unique. It is like almost nothing else I have ever played. Next is Turbo Overkill, and oh my god, is this game so awesome. It really takes the best elements of a lot of older first-person shooters, again, very Doom-inspired, plus a bunch of pop culture references that are really, really fun. And everything it borrows in a very smart, innovative way. So it never feels like a rip-off of anything. It feels like it has its own identity, but that it very carefully, masterfully almost, took cues from every other game that it should have, if that makes sense. And I actually can't imagine many people not liking this game, unless you're just really off-put by an older aesthetic. Again, you really just like the shiny graphics of the AAA space or something. It is just so much fun, so over the top. Such a thrill to play. I cannot recommend this game enough. Next is Dave the Diver, which did actually take off pretty well this year. It has a couple of different gameplay loops that I think complement each other perfectly well. You play as a literal diver, and some of the dives are quite compelling, trying to capture fish to then sell in your restaurant. It is perfectly well directed. Every single part of this game, from art to music to gameplay, is all pushing in this same one very satisfying direction. With, and it might surprise you initially, a story that actually has something very interesting to say. Of course, you upgrade your little diver as you play along, and it's another one of those ones that I want to be like, play it. I promise you no gameplay I could show you will make this game look as fun as it actually is, but it is very fulfilling, very wholesome, still challenging, and remarkably creative. This is one of the best games of the year, no doubt, and it's just so unique. Pizza Tower is a pretty quick game for you to get through. Again, look how different all of these games look. Isn't this cool?
Right.
You're talking to me about how all games suck and all games look the same. I'm having trouble even getting through this list. So Pizza Tower is very stylish, sort of a Wario Land type. It's a really clever, silly, over-the-top, animated platformer with some really fun boss fights and an old school gameplay style. If you're sick of modern games, jump right in. It also has one of my favorite soundtracks of the year. I definitely would have nominated it if I were on any juries. And I have difficulty finding anything really to flaw with it. It's effectively a perfect platformer. Next is Slay the Princess, which, wow, we getting creepy. This is a psychological horror visual novel that has a beautiful art style, a really fun and, in my opinion, fairly unpredictable plot twist, which is especially kind of uncommon in the choose your own adventure style, which is what this is. It is an incredibly in-depth, choice-driven game. I am so impressed by the narrative design in this game. It also has great characters, just tons of detail, and I don't think I've even scratched the surface of everything that exists in this game just yet. Next up is Cocoon, which is exactly my shit. This is definitely one of my games of the year. This is one of those games similar to Tunic for me, where it is just so expertly made that certain components of it just become like jaw-dropping, just awe-inspiring, absolutely mind-blowingly incredible. It's a challenging puzzle game with beautiful visuals, really strong themes, a lot of style in line with games like Inside, which is in my top 10 games ever. It features smart design top to bottom, plus some really fun boss fights. Next is Dead Cells Return to Castlevania, which you may have heard me talk about already on the channel. If you like Castlevania at all, I think Castlevania Symphony of the Night is probably still the best PlayStation game. At least it's up there. This is such a fantastic ode to the series, combining obviously Dead Cells style with Castlevania's style. It's a collaboration that I never would have seen coming, but they absolutely nail it. Not much else I feel like really needs to be said here, just two absolute goats being Dead Cells and Castlevania combined to make something pretty much perfect. Next up, and for the record, I could keep going. There is a lot more that I could mention. There are so many more games that I could mention, but I tried to pick ones that are different and ones that don't just fit the usual AAA style. Like, it's such a good year for games. Tried to be just, distinct in what I picked here. This is the Talos Principle 2. It is a very well-written and very challenging puzzle game, sort of like The Witness. It's really thought-provoking, both tonally and in story and in puzzles. Not overly difficult, like you're not going to bash your head against a wall playing it, but still really imaginative in a way that I just find so impressive. You'll see things and hear things and talk to people and have conversations in this game that will make you think in a way that I really appreciated my time with it. Like I am better for this game existing. You also don't need to have played the first game to play the second one, though I would personally recommend it. If you like The Portal, if you like The Witness, if you like anything like that, definitely check out Talos Principle 2 or any of the other countless very good games that came out in 2023 and come out every single year. If you're still here at the end, I doubt many people made it to the end because the start of this video is where the spice is. Can you just leave a comment in the comments section saying the word chicken? Just chicken. I just want to see how many of you made it to the end. All right, a lot of video games are really great, y'all. Chicken out.
Excellent.
Yeah, man.
Made a lot of really good points, honestly.
Yeah, and I think they're points that we've all kind of tried to make at different times on the podcast.
Yeah.
Not perpetuating the cycle of bad games, not shitting on games constantly, and
vote with your
vote with your wallet. Give AA and indie games
stop pre-ordering games.
Stop pre-ordering. Right.
Made a lot of the same points that I feel like we have also made over the time, but like I said, like we kind of talked about, there's no such thing as bad press, and when all of a sudden when something like Gollum gets talked about more than Dredge,
yeah,
then
And she talked about it, and she says she's guilty of it herself.
Yeah.
As a streamer, she played a lot of Golem on stream, but not Dredge. Dredge she kept for herself, right? When maybe it probably would have just been better to play Dredge on stream and enjoy it with her community rather than, pleasing the algorithm with a game that's just getting mad press because it's bad, right?
Yeah.
So I still think that bad games are worth talking about sometimes, especially in the vein of, stay away from this if you're not into this, kind of thing, or this is just bad for the industry type thing,
harming
right?
the industry or is predatory towards the community.
Yeah.
But
because some people look to the games press to give opinions on games, and some people's purchasing decisions are swayed by that. So I still think it's good to talk about games when they're bad, but I also think games that are good need more time in the spotlight, especially smaller games, the ones that don't have massive advertising budgets and aren't going to be like a default purchase for most PS5 owners or most Xbox owners or most leisure game players, right? Something outside of the AAA vein that doesn't that isn't on TV.
Last year, on average, Steam dropped 40 games a day, and so that when she makes the point, if you're saying all games are shit, I have to agree with her. Then you probably don't like video games. The reason you don't like video games, like for the longest time, guys, I know I was guilty of it. The only game I liked was Overwatch. And while I loved that game, I also fucking hated that game. And then they took the thing that I honestly, I would crush my nard in one of my hands to have the loot boxes back. And how much did I hate loot boxes? I mean, how much did everybody hate loot boxes?
Yeah.
But I mean, I look back on that time like a fond memory now of when I got to have, free characters for free and a chance at a holiday skin, But in fairness, I haven't played Overwatch 2 since the first 4 days that it came out and we were all playing it as a group, So I make a resolution myself to kind of do more what, like Alanah was saying, putting my money where my mouth is and focusing on the positive, on the games that I do like, instead of complaining about what I don't. Yeah, no, she made a lot of good points. A lot of good points.
Well, I just as far as the general like milieu of our podcasts, I decided to deviate a little bit. It's the new year, right? This is the first podcast of 2024. And I thought that was a good opportunity, especially to talk about, the games of 2023. And I think this was more than I wanted to go over, the good, the bad, make a tier list, whatever. I think this kind of sums up what I really wanted to express through this medium. The reason for our podcast to exist was it's a good excuse for a few friends to get together and talk about video games for a few hours with a few people in chat that like to talk about video games for a few hours. Two, it was a good outlet to kind of discuss what we thought were the failings in the industry and what were the positives of the industry, and to talk about games that we were playing and talk about games that we liked and disliked. It was never meant to be a review channel, but if we could sway you into buying a game that you ended up really liking because it was featured on our podcast, excellent. Yeah. Or if we could save you, $10-20 here and there because we discuss how little we enjoyed a game or the issues that we had with it, being that we are distinctly different, players and we like distinctly different genres. Maybe that hopefully helped.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to jump and say, I would not consider us a review podcast at all.
No.
We talk about games that we want to play, big games. Everybody's going to talk about GTA 6. Everybody's going to talk about,
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty, you know, like, so we have to mention those. Everybody's going to talk about Spider-Man 2. Everybody's going to talk about Cyberpunk, right? So we have played a lot of those games, but yeah, I never felt like we were a review channel.
No,
recommendation channel.
I will give recommendations all day, but
yeah,
what I
sure,
won't do is give like a numeric value as far as a review goes. Now, we have in the past given a numeric value just as we're trying to sum something up. But we always tried to, like, that's not our intention, is to give like a 1 out of 10 or you know, a number out of 10 or a number out of 5 to a review. Our review is just talking about our experience with the game.
And I feel like when we do something like, oh, it's going to be a 10, like that's a reflective of how excited we are for the IP of that game, not necessarily that, you know, the game's a 10. Because boy, howdy, was I excited for Jedi Survivor. And again, Jedi Survivor is an improvement on the first game in every way, except for how it runs.
Well, and when we were talking about this channel, when we first were talking about starting it, is, you know, what do we do other than, you know, BS with each other for 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
Because our podcast used to actually be like between 2 and 3 hours. And that, as far as a formula goes, we decided not to do reviews. Like, we did not want to give numerical reviews. One, we don't play enough games to give you a review from us each week. Like, especially if all three of us were to have 3 different games to review every week, we don't play enough video. We don't have that kind of money or time. We all have. This is our
fun hobby.
Yeah, this is our fun hobby. So this is not what we do for a living. We have to make a living outside of this. So you know, we don't have the money or the time to do so. So it's not just that, but also like giving a numeric quantifier to how much you might enjoy a game is also, I think, silly. Because I already don't listen to reviews that give me a quantitative number about how well I should enjoy this game, because I very rarely agree with their numeric value. So finding somebody that enjoys, you know, the kind of games that you play, like, we have 3 very distinctly different gamers here. Josh, who tends to play a lot of the more AAA releases as they're coming out, you know, has put his feet in the water, so to speak, as far as like getting into PC gaming and experiencing some of the less than AAA stuff recently. But we have Nick, who plays almost exclusively indie games. Yep. Whereas I am kind of in between. I bounce around between them both quite a bit, where I get a lot of enjoyment from indie games. I also play some AAA games pretty regularly. And I'm the only one that really does like MMOs. For the most part, or at least get sucked into them the way I do. So I have a lot to say and contribute there. So we all have 3 varying opinions on games. So finding one of us that you agree with the most and more frequently is just going to be, you know, it's going to give you a variety of different.
I used to be really into sports games too.
But it's going to give you a variety of different interpretations on games and different levels of review from games from different gamers, right? So, you know, I might like something a little bit less than Josh because it's not quite my thing, but he enjoys it more because it's more his thing. And I think that gives you a better quantitative analysis of how good a video game is rather than just a numeric score.
Yeah. Plus, I feel like we also get into we're industry heavy.
Yeah.
And we're talking about that stuff quite a bit. And I also feel like we hone in on hardware that's got like, and not just in the specifically for the gaming, but how that's going to affect the gaming. So I feel like we focus on, like, we definitely are. Because when people ask me what the podcast's about, I say gaming news and nerd culture. Yeah. Like, because we spread it around a little bit because we're talking about shows that are involved with gaming to a greater or lesser degree, you know. So there's definitely. I feel like we got a mixed bag over here at Tango.
For sure. So yeah. I want to leave with a request from you, our listener and our viewer. head on over to our Twitch or our YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And if there is a way to leave a comment or a rating, leave a rating. I don't really care what the rating is. The better, the better. But, if you feel like we deserve a 3 out of 5 stars, give us a 3 out of 5 stars. But more important than that is in your review or your comment or, whatever means of communication you have with us is communicate with us.
Yeah.
How did you feel about tonight's content? Because this is something that I wouldn't mind doing on occasion, is featuring another creator. Now, Alanah Pearce is like way bigger than we are, like infinitely bigger than we are. We are not on the same plane here. That said, we value her opinion in the industry, and like if you would like a little bit more of this similar kind of content where we listen to a talking head piece and discuss it, more than anything, I thought this would be a good overall discussion on a talking point with essentially a moderator in the form of Alanah. So if this is kind of the content that you're into, let me know. It's something that we can definitely do more. I don't want to rely on third parties as far as content creators goes too often. But if it's something that you like, let us know. Sound off. Go to Video Game Tango and leave us a voicemail. Maybe if you have more to say than just what you can put in a comment box, leave us a voicemail. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from your computer. And we'd love to hear from you. At any rate, get a hold of us one way or another. However you ingest your Video Game Tango weekly. Really appreciate you sounding off and letting us know if you enjoyed this or if you think we could do something better.
Yeah.
Other than that, make sure you tune in Mondays and Wednesdays for our new WoW lore content. We do stream that live every Monday evening.
Yep.
But the VODs come out Monday and Wednesday. Of course, the podcast comes out on Fridays like usual. That's not changing anytime soon. And if you're into our more long-form content, maybe hit us up live on Twitch, because before the podcast even goes live, the podcast is usually about an hour-ish long. So if you like that, that form of content and just want more, check us out live. We go live Wednesday nights around 9 p.m. or so Pacific time. And we'd enjoy to have you in chat. And we have an entire pre-show before the podcast starts.
Yeah,
and
it's generally like an hour and a half long of just...
It's generally the bulk of the podcast. Yep. We have been live for just shy of 3 hours. And this podcast has been a little under an hour. So... come over to Twitch, and we'd love to see you live, especially in the comment or in the chat. So
very interactive in the pre-show. Very interactive. We discuss topics ranging. From literally everything. Yeah. It's not just video game related.
In fact, it's very rarely video game related in the pre-show.
Yep. So
like I mentioned during the podcast, we last Monday during WoW Lore spent like 45 minutes talking about skincare routines between Josh and I. Yep. And we were getting a bit of discussion in chat with that. So, just, free form spitballing before the podcast starts. So you get more Video Game Tango. And if you want to keep it gaming related, sound off in the chat and we will. So, anyways, let us know how you like it. Like, subscribe, follow on Twitch, do all that normal stuff. We really appreciate you guys, especially helping us getting out of this suppression hole that we've been in YouTube. That we've talked about previously, so I won't get into the weeds there. But if you like our content,
every subscribe, every like helps us get noticed, and that's what YouTube wants to see.
Yep. So that's it for this edition of Video Game Tango. We will see you next week.